Hey, so remember when I took a Star Wars ship and had an artist turn it into a Star Trek ship? Well, I did it again. I'm calling this the Class Y Courier Ship, and as you can see by the shape, it is clearly inspired by the Y-Wing from the original Star Wars trilogy. Yeah, there's been a number of different Y-Wings throughout Star Wars, but this one was based off of the original Y-Wing from the original movie, but redesigned to reflect the design style of the original Star Trek series. If you remember the Phantom class fighter I had done a while back, which was based off of the Naboo fighter from Star Wars Episode 1, this is done by the same artist, ISS Avatine, or at NCC-60205, as he's known on Blue Sky. I'll link both his Blue Sky and his Twitter down below in the pinned comment. But yeah, I'm very happy with how this came out. You know, I was very ecstatic with how he did the Phantom class, as well as that Michigan class starship that I had done from him too. So yeah, I'm very excited to have been able to commission him again to do this this ship as well, because the Y-Wing is something I've been wanting to turn into a Star Trek ship for a while now. You know, those big engine pods on the Y-Wing, to me, those have always been asking to be replaced with these, these original series type warp nacelles. The shape of them just totally matches up in my mind, so I was really excited to finally be able to do this. I'll start by talking about some of the design choices made for this ship before I get into the actual lore that I've developed for this thing. For this ship, I didn't want to do just another fighter like I had done with the Phantom class, because I don't think this type of design would have been used as a small combat vessel within Starfleet during this time period. Because if Starfleet's going to have a fighter type ship in this time period, I feel like it would more closely resemble the Kodai class fighters, or possibly the tactical flyers of Star Trek Discovery. So it would be somewhere along those lines. I don't think it would be more along this line, where it's just two giant warp nacelles on this smaller hull here. So that's why instead I had more of an idea of this being sort of like a really fast, really slimmed down shuttlecraft. That's why I ended up going with the idea that this is a courier ship, something that's meant to get from A to B really quickly with a small crew complement. That's what inspired the layout of the cockpit here. You can see you got two seats in the front with some consoles on there, enough space in the back. Maybe there's like a small bunk, other small amenities you would expect on something for a spaceship like this. Maybe a third console for a third person in the back, something like that. But yeah, it's meant to be a very small, somewhat cramped spaceship. Like the rest of this, you probably wouldn't even have access to through here, except through like maybe small little maintenance Jeffries tubes or something like that to get further back into here, but it wouldn't be something you would be hanging around casually inside most of the time. Most of the time you're going to be spending those long voyages mainly here in the cockpit area. This wasn't the first design that Avatine sent me. I'll show you some of the other concepts that he sent earlier before we finalized on this choice. But yeah, this was the one I ultimately decided was the best for the idea of the ship that I was thinking of. Like I said, it's not meant to be a combat-oriented ship like the actual Y-Wing is. This is meant to be, like I said, it's a courier ship. It's just meant to get you from A to B as quickly as possible for something of its size. This ship being part of Star Trek Align's original series design aesthetic, of course, I had to make sure there was a deflector dish somewhere on this thing that looked like an old school satellite. So it's got the little antenna with the dish around it. And I felt like, placing that right at the front of the cockpit, where normally I think that's where the ion cannons on the Y-Wing normally are, I think, whatever those guns are on the forward section of the cockpit of the Y-Wing. Yeah, I put a deflector dish there instead, because it made it feel more Star Trek, particularly for this era. Most of the bodywork, that was all Avatine's doing, which I'm really happy with how that came out with. There's just these extra little details that just add a little extra character to the ship. It really makes it look like something. Like I like this little roll bar here along the spine that kind of reflects that kind of handlebar that you would normally expect on some of the warp nacelles, but this is meant to be a much smaller ship, so yeah, it kind of works here too. And it's I don't know, it's one of those little details that Avatine's really good at just adding to a ship that gives it just a little bit more personality, and I really like that. I'm not sure what the heck this is supposed to be. I'm not sure if this is supposed to be part of like the impulse drive, or maybe it's like part of the warp core. I'm not really sure, but it just looks neat, and it's definitely like a good placeholder for where the astromech would normally be on the Y-Wing. in my mind, the actual impulse engines would be somewhere on the back end of the hull. So it's, there's really not much other surface area where you could put those. Like unlike on the Phantom, where I had the impulse engines placed on the pylons, because the Odyssey class design style it allows for that. That's not really something you see on original series ships, though. So in my mind, they're right there on the back of the section of the hull. Now, this is basically the original notes that I sent to Aventine for when I wanted to do this, and for the you can see on the original engine pods for the Y-wing, you can see it's got these like brackets for like part of the engine, which I thought these were always kind of neat. But how Starfleet ships, they have these sort of these sort of like fins or brackets, I don't know what you want to call those, but they have these here on the end of the nacelles, and I thought you could use these and kind of put them in place of here, which is what I had Aventine do here. So these, those little bracket handle things, whatever you want to call them, they're laid out in a similar fashion to that kind of frame section of the Y-wing's original engine. So it's meant to be meant to kind of pay homage to the original design a little bit more. Now, if some of you have been paying attention to the registry number, I'm sure some of you are noting it's probably kind of weird. But yeah, in my research for this, I wanted this thing to be treated kind of like a shuttle. It's an auxiliary craft that's mainly posted onto starbases. And in doing my research for that, I discovered registry numbers for shuttles assigned to starbases are kind of weird. This is a shot from the remastered original series where you see a shuttle from a Starfleet starbase, where you can see right here the registry number is SB11, meaning it's from Starbase 11, and then a 4-digit number. In this case being 1201-1. The dash one being what number shuttle it's meant to be. So I figured out, that's meant to be the starbase. That's meant to be what number shuttle it is assigned to the starbase. I never figured out what these 4 numbers are supposed to be, though. Here's another from Starbase 4, so SB4-0314. Again, no idea what these 4 numbers are supposed to be, but then -2. So it's a shuttle from Starbase 4 and whatever this number is supposed to be, and then this is supposed to be the second shuttle assigned to Starbase 4. So, having no idea what those middle 4 numbers are supposed to be, I just went with the tried and true 47, because classic Star Trek meme. My guess is maybe it's meant to be like the sector that the starbase is assigned to. Maybe that's what it is. I'm not really sure. I just, went with the classic 47 meme number. But yeah, that's why the registry number looks kind of weird, is because it's designed to be based off of the number that you would see on a shuttle that is assigned to a starbase. You can see a bit more of that here on the front, here on the bow section, as well as big Starbase 13 printed on the side, and SB13 here on the top of the shuttle. So really meant to be an identifier that this is meant to be assigned to a starbase rather than a mobile starship. I really stuck with that idea because obviously this is going to be a bit bigger than a normal Class J shuttle, so I would imagine, like, even on some of the smaller starships, this probably wouldn't be able to even fit into the shuttle bay of smaller starships. But also, like, this being my idea with this is that it's meant to be a ship that's capable of really high warp and probably has a number of maintenance requirements that make it a ship that, it requires a lot of hand holding there to make sure it's running at optimal efficiency, something that you probably don't have the resources or time to deal with on a full-fledged starship. But on a starbase, they probably have the resources and personnel to deal with a ship with a higher maintenance cost like this. Now, here's some of the earlier concepts that Aventine sent me before we decided on the final version of the ship. The body remained pretty much the same throughout the entire time. I was pretty happy with that from the get-go, so that remained pretty much unchanged aside from the registry along the side of the nacelles. The cockpit is what really went through the most changes. Here with this one, I felt like this one was too fighter oriented. Like I said, I wanted this to be more of a courier ship, something that would be almost sort of like a proto runabout thing, like that. Something that would be designed to get from A to B, but faster than the average shuttlecraft. So that's kind of the thinking I had with this courier ship. That this was meant to be like a really early version of what would eventually become the runabouts of the 24th century. And this cockpit really didn't fit that vibe to me. This was much more fighter-esque in my opinion, and Aventine kind of agreed with that. I don't think he was that sure that I was going with the courier aesthetic until later. So yeah, we decided to turn this one down, and this was one of the other concepts he sent me. This is when we were kind of really cemented in the idea that, yeah, this is going to be a courier ship, and I liked this design, but I felt like it didn't really match up with what I was really trying to go for with this ship. Like, for one, I didn't really like this section here. It looks like a car door, which I thought, I don't know, I didn't mesh with what I really wanted to do with this ship. And I also wasn't super, I didn't like the idea of this section like cutting into the cockpit. It just makes the interior even smaller, which is why I ultimately decided to go with this design when he sent me these last two designs at the same time, and I like this one better. It feels much more reminiscent of a classic TOS shuttle, which is kind of the vibe I was going for this one. It's meant to be just a really fast, kind of experimental type shuttlecraft with a smaller crew complement. For the lore of this ship, I like to think of it as starting out life as an experiment of getting a small ship with a small space frame to a very high warp velocity, something close to the level that you would expect on a starship. Because at this point, shuttles, they really only have a maximum velocity of warp 3, warp 4, somewhere around there. So my thinking is, this could get something maybe close to somewhere around warp 7, maybe. We'll call it 6.9 just to be funny. But obviously, to get that extra speed, there are some notable trade-offs. It's got a much larger body, much larger warp nacelles, and a much smaller cockpit, housing a maximum crew of 2 to 3 personnel, including passengers. The ship is also very lightly armed, so it's not suitable for combat. This thing was strictly used for getting from point A to point B. The ship would also have a very high maintenance cost, so it was probably ill-suited for being stationed on mobile starships and better suited for larger starbases. This being a courier ship, it was often used for transporting classified or very sensitive intelligence data that was deemed too sensitive to trust subspace radio. So this was often used as a way to transport information from one place to another when you couldn't trust that the Klingons or the Romulans might be listening into the subspace radios, and for when you didn't have a full-fledged starship available to do that kind of job for you. It could also be used for transporting small cargo or even VIPs when you really need to get someone like an ambassador from one place to the other. Yeah, it would probably be cramped and uncomfortable for said ambassador, but it would definitely be better than that time they stuffed Kalar into a Class 8 probe. I would say this ship would go into full active service somewhere in the early to mid 2260s, meaning this thing would be active, in the original series era, in a time when tensions between the Federation and the Klingon Empire are really starting to rise. So that's when this ship would really start to get a lot of its use, transporting valuable information and even small cargo between starbases, when the rest of the fleet is out patrolling the border for Klingon battlecruisers. Oh, I didn't talk about the name. Well, the name is kind of obvious. It's a Class Y courier. Obviously, calling it Class Y is meant to be a very obvious reference to this being based off of the Y-Wing from Star Wars. I was kind of worried that the name would seem kind of lazy, but honestly, calling it class and then just a letter really fits in with, existing naming convention for auxiliary craft and shuttles. Like the original series shuttle is literally just called the Class J. So it felt kind of lazy, but at the same time, it did feel appropriate for the existing naming conventions for shuttlecraft of this era. So I just decided to keep it that way. But yeah, that is my Class Y courier ship. I really hope you guys enjoyed seeing this. I'm really happy with how this came out. Aventine did an absolutely fantastic job of putting this together based off of my rough assembly of ideas that I put together. I'm really happy with this. I love the idea of it, and it's just, I'm really happy with this. Let me know what you guys think of this ship down below in the comments, and make sure you go follow Aventine over on Blue Sky or Twitter. They are a really great artist, and they do a lot of cool stuff, so they definitely deserve the follow. Be sure to do that, and comment down below what you think of the ship. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. If you'd like to further support the channel, hit the join button to become a member, check out the merch store, use the other affiliate links in the pinned comment, all that usual outro stuff. If you're ever shopping on the Epic Game Store, use my content creator code STU1701. These things really help me out, and I really do appreciate it. Either way, though, thank you so much for watching. My name's Stu, and I will see you guys next time.